Sometimes life gets crazy and it's just too easy to focus on all the negativity in the world. Welcome to the audio antidote to that. On this show, we highlight the amazing and positive work being done in the world to remind ourselves that there is hope out there for the future. And along the way, we'll pick up some new perspectives and ideas so we can all work together to make the world a little bit better. Because we know that when creativity and community come together, we can create good. This is Creating Good with Matt Barnes. Let's do it! Hello there, my friends. Welcome to another episode of Creating Good with Matt Barnes. I'm Matt Barnes, Matt from Rogue, if you're looking for me anywhere online, at Matt from Rogue. This is Creating Good, the podcast where we tell the stories of people who are using what they have to create good in the world. And that's what the whole Creating Good movement is about. And it's good to hear the stories because I can tell you right now, I feel like I'm inundated all day, every day with just push notifications and everything telling me how the world is, burning down around me. And it's nice to be reminded that there are people out there doing good and to be inspired to do that myself. All of us have the abilities, talents, experiences, unique opportunities to use what we have to create good in the world. And that doesn't have to be a business. It can be anything to use what we have to create good and make the world a little bit better. And so that's what this is all about. Today, I've got an amazing guest who I really enjoyed talking to. We've gotten to know each other over the last few months. Her name is Maria McRoberts. She is a graphic designer, a background with photography and package design, printed materials, and brand identity projects, all the things that I love and have worked on. But right now, she's the art director at ThinkTogether. ThinkTogether is a nonprofit organization partnering with schools to change the odds for kids. They equip students with the tools they need to succeed and schools with the solutions that transform teaching and learning from the boardroom to the classroom. So they're trying to make the education system better. And, my background's in education, so I think we can all get behind that. We want our kids to be prepared for the future. And I love the work they're doing, especially talking to Maria about working at a nonprofit and using her design skills and photography skills and creative skills to help tell the story of what this amazing organization's doing. It was great. I love hanging out with Maria. Now, I will give you this. We had a glitch in the middle of this episode, and you will hear this happen where the memory card ran out and we didn't realize it. So we kept talking for another 15 minutes before I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, the last 15 minutes have not been recorded. So we address that and then we move on, and it actually worked out really, really well. So enjoy this episode with Maria McRoberts. Maria McRoberts, thank you for coming in and doing this today. I don't get to do in-person podcasts that much anymore, so this is really exciting.
Oh, it is super exciting for me too. Thank you for having me.
Of course, yeah. And it's so nice to get people local to come in and actually get to sit face to face instead of Zoom. Zoom's great. I enjoy all you other guests. I enjoy you too on Zoom, but it's nice being in person. We start off every episode with a segment called 3 Random Questions.
Okay.
Many, many random questions, and we choose randomly 3 of them. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. These ones are pretty easy today, actually.
Okay, good.
Not like I really have challenging, hard ones most of the time. But, all right, what is your favorite part of the day?
Probably winding down.
Yeah.
Just going through the day, realizing challenges, things that I accomplished. I'm a big collector of vinyl records.
Oh, rad.
So I just put a record on, just let it play until it ends, turn off my devices, read for a little bit. It's just like the best part of the day.
That sounds amazing. By everything you just said, you just told me that you don't have kids.
I do have 2 teenage boys.
Oh, they're teenagers. Okay, so you're at the age where they're kind of taking care of themselves. Not
Yes.
taking care of themselves, but
Yes.
Because my kids would not let me put on a record and sit down and relax.
It will
That's
happen
not
eventually.
an option.
A few years from now.
Oh man, we're not at that stage yet. By the time they go to bed, we just crash on the couch and
I remember those days very clearly. Very clearly.
They're the best, but it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Yep. All right. Second question: Beach or mountains?
Beach.
Yeah?
Yeah. I grew up in Mexico City, so the beach is a luxury.
Oh, yeah.
You had to actually plan a trip to go to the beach.
Right.
So the fact that I can drive 15 minutes and be there
Yeah.
still feels like a huge privilege.
Yeah. Well, It's one of those things that, because I grew up here, but you don't take advantage of it sometimes when you're living near it. I mean, maybe for you because you didn't have it, but I live 5 minutes from the beach, and I can't tell you. We went down and did a team photo shoot at the beach like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, we have this end of summer, and I'm like, this is the first time I'm at the beach this summer. Like I never even made it down to the beach, or I went to school at Pepperdine in Malibu, and like literally, I'm like on the beach, right. And I can count on two hands the amount of times I went to the beach in college, and I'm like, what was wrong with me? Like it was right there.
No, I still love it. I love it.
Yeah. All right, last question. What is your comfort movie?
This is going to sound weird, but I really like intense drama.
Okay.
I feel like that helps me decompress.
Okay. Like, well, my life's not that bad, so
exactly.
Things aren't that crazy.
Exactly. So I really love anything that Guillermo del Toro makes.
Oh, okay.
I'm a huge fan.
Okay.
But his movies are not
they're weird.
Very romantic stories or anything like that.
No, but I mean, they're great.
Yes. So my favorite one is Pan's Labyrinth.
Okay, I've not seen Pan's Labyrinth. I've heard amazing things.
You should see it.
Okay, I need
this weekend.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think my wife will watch it.
No, probably not. Or,
You're like, I don't know her, but it does not sound like it.
It doesn't sound like, hey, let's watch this movie, you and I, kind of a thing. But it's visually amazing. The story is amazing, well acted, music. It's just one of those whole package films for me.
Okay. Yeah, it's one I've always wanted to check out. Like obviously marriage and kids are amazing, but everything's trade-offs, and so I went from living by myself for 8 years where I could just watch any movie I wanted anytime I wanted, and now it's like, okay, what are we gonna? Because I love a good horror movie.
Yeah.
And she will not, and so I never get to see horror movies anymore. My poor sad life. All right. Well, you passed 3 random questions. Good job. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You did well. Do you want a bonus question?
Sure.
Can you do any impressions?
No.
Oh, okay.
I can barely just be me.
I'm always curious. I think it's always funny like this. Okay, well then, what's a hidden talent? Do you have a hidden talent? You're here, so I'm like, I just feel like I need to ask one. I don't know.
I don't think so. I mean, I have a lot of things that I do wrong. Like, I'm very famous at parking, for terrible parking.
Oh, okay.
I just can't do it.
Sure.
And I have friends who are like, you can draw a straight line right now without a ruler, but you cannot park.
Well, draw a straight line without a ruler, that's a talent. I can't do that. So
well, I can do that. I cannot park my car.
All right. Well, let's get into it. You are working in nonprofit space and doing. Tell us your origin story. How did you get to where you're at? What are you doing?
Well, like I said, I grew up in Mexico City.
Yeah.
I lived there the first 24 years of my life.
Okay.
I graduated from photography school. And then, so I have a background in photography. I moved to California about 20 years ago. And I just started taking some graphic design classes at the community college.
Yeah.
Just because of parenting. Because I needed a space where I wasn't Liam's mom, where I was just Maria.
Yeah.
And that was very important to me, to recover that sense of who I was before being a mom. And I loved it. And I realized that I was good at it. Mm-hmm. So I finished the whole program at the community college, and immediately I was offered a paid internship at a publishing company.
Nice.
And it was a publishing company that had multiple magazines. So one day I was designing a spread for a Cars magazine, and I know nothing about cars, obviously. So it was a challenge. And then another day I was designing an ad for a nail magazine, and that opened up so many possibilities.
Yeah.
Clients would see the ads that I was designing, and they were like, I want to work with her because I have this packaging need, or I'm rebranding, or I want to do things different, and I feel like she is approaching it in a different way. And I just started developing a really good portfolio, just freelancing, balancing, being a mom of 2 kids, while doing projects at night, things like that. And once I felt like I had a very solid portfolio, I was ready to jump into the workforce and be a full-time employee somewhere.
Yeah.
So I applied to a stationery company, and they do paper goods too, like, paper plates and party supplies, things like that. And that gave me so much experience. I started to think differently when you go from flat to three-dimensional and depth and presence on a shelf and things like that.
Sure.
But I also met amazing women designers who were also in my position, either getting pregnant or balancing a life at home. And they're just such a tremendous force. And I just felt so inspired by them every day. Eventually, I moved on to a different company, similar products. And I got the opportunity to apply for a position where I am now, which is a nonprofit called ThinkTogether.
Right.
And part of it was that I felt I was ready for a challenge of managing a brand. Paper goods is very seasonal based.
Sure.
So you get a new palette and you get a new illustrations every Halloween.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of a brand and having this single block of clay that sometimes needed to be an ashtray and sometimes a mug and sometimes a plate, right? But it's the same block.
Yeah.
And you just have to learn how to manipulate it to serve different purposes. And I applied for it, and then eventually I got this position as senior designer, and a couple of years ago I got promoted to art director.
Nice.
Yeah, and I love it.
Yeah?
I love working there. Yeah.
This is perfect because you represent sort of both sides of me, and everything that I love is we with our creative it's design and it's branding and it's how do you bring a character and personality and to an organization, which most people don't think of it that way. They don't think of an organization having personality. They think of it as like, okay, put it on some letterhead and, branding is just a logo and then you move on. And so to bring that to life, but then also how you can use that in the nonprofit space or even in the for-profit space, but, to really make the world better, to really make things better for people and use that as an engine that helps connect people. What have been some of the biggest challenges for you in that as a creative designer who, it's always, I'm always telling my team the interesting challenge with design, for hire is it's not art.
Right.
I mean, it is art, but it's not art. You're not an art. You're not a pure artist. You're working for somebody, so you're under somebody else's requirements and restraints. Yeah. But you also have to bring your creativity and find that balance and be able to find that fulfillment. So sorry, I talked too much there. What do you find the biggest challenges for you?
I love this, and I can kind of just connect to what you were saying. I love the distinction between creativity and being artistic.
Yeah.
People usually conflict those two terms.
Yes.
They usually say, oh, you're so creative when you're doing a watercolor painting, right? And I just see them as two different toolboxes. And, creativity is just human nature.
Yeah.
We're all creative beings. It doesn't matter if you're an accountant or a lawyer or a doctor. As soon as you are trying to find a solution to a problem,
that's right,
you're a creative person. And the art toolbox, it's a different story.
Yeah.
And it has to do a lot about gut-based intuition and inspiration.
Expression.
And there's a lot of failure in there and disappointment and tenacity. So I feel like good design and good designers happen when you get tools from both boxes and cause this overlap of important things. I love that the art part of it, it's about creating an emotional response.
Yeah.
And the way that it happens for me is that I immediately have an emotional attachment to the piece I'm creating.
Yeah.
I feel like without that part, I cannot ask the audience to have a reaction to it.
Right.
If I'm not putting emotion into it, then it's just like you said, a logo on a letterhead, and we're done with it.
Yeah.
And usually people say, well, how do you deal with the negative feedback? Because obviously, as soon as you put a design out there, you're immediately judged.
Yeah.
It's a very vulnerable space.
Very. And that's what I'm saying. Like, it's that weird thing where in some ways you're doing corporate work,
Yes.
right? But you're still bringing that vulnerable art side to it.
Absolutely.
And finding that balance and not taking, how do you grow and learn and not take it personally and get them what they want, but also feel fulfilled as a creative person who's using these tools? It's a challenge.
Yeah. So I usually say, look, you have some negative feedback. I made you feel something. You hate it.
Yeah.
Let me hear it.
Yeah.
I need to know where that comes from.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's based on your own personal experience. And now you're at this point in your life when you hate red.
Right.
That's just based on your own personal history.
Yeah.
So let me use the tools in my creativity box to change that narrative for you. Let's talk about it. There's a reason why this is red,
right,
or why it's a circle, or why it's placed here and not there,
right?
So that's been challenging. I think it's challenging in any kind of design role that you have.
Yeah.
But the nonprofit space, and I say this all the time, it's very particular in a way that you talk to so many audiences.
Yes.
And this is why I like that reference of the block of clay that needs to serve different purposes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm talking to our students, which is like my favorite kind of project.
Sure.
Sometimes I'm talking to the IT department and we're creating inspirational murals in the space so they don't feel so isolated. And sometimes I'm talking to donors, who have not known what we do until that very point, or who have known us for many years. Sometimes it's school districts. Sometimes it's internal communications. That's squeezing a lot out of a single brand.
Okay, so I want to address what just happened.
Okay.
Because I don't know how this is going to get edited together. But I apologize to Maria. Our SD card just ran out. It said it had plenty of space on it. It said it had over an hour left on it, and then it just stopped recording. But we didn't notice that it had stopped recording.
Nope.
We talked for a good 15 minutes after that.
Yeah, I guess
Sure.
the SD card was done with our conversation.
Yeah.
I'm done with you guys.
And we're having such a great conversation. So we are going to recreate that now for you, our listeners. But I apologize. That was just, gosh darn, I looked down and the light was green instead of red. And I'm like, what is happening? Okay. So editors, good luck with this. I believe the last thing that got recorded, we were talking about the challenges of different audiences for nonprofits and in general. Specifically with nonprofits, the additional challenge of, like you were saying, sometimes it's donors, sometimes it's kids, sometimes and that's fun from a creative standpoint, but it's also a challenge to say, how do we, create a website that is strategically designed to reach up to 3 or 4 different audiences, and how do we take the design and shift it in these ways? I know, one of the things that I love a good challenge.
Yes.
Right? Like
Yes.
it's, to me, that's like, I don't know. I like finding, like, sometimes my favorite thing is when we get somebody in a really boring field coming to us and being like, can you do some branding for us? And I'm like, or make a video for us, and people be like, oh, that sounds terrible for insurance or something like that. And I'm like, no, that's the challenge. Like, how do we take something like that and make it interesting? So I like how do we take this brand foundation that we have and make it so that it's flexible enough that we can adapt it for these different audiences? Do you find do you encounter that challenge a lot internally at ThinkTogether?
Yeah, I think most of the times what happens is that we have a single strategy that needs to have different functions at different times.
Right.
So sometimes the biggest strategy focus should be recruitment because we're growing and we need to hire people. Sometimes it needs to be that we have this event and we need to do fundraising, and all of it, it's still social media, it's still the website presence, and it's still signage. So how do we transform the same piece to appeal to that specific purpose?
Yeah.
It's a challenge that I think it's very unique to the nonprofit world. And just like you, I like the challenge.
Yeah.
I don't have a boring life. I don't want a boring life. I've had many challenges in my life.
Yeah.
But it doesn't scare me.
But that's the whole point of creativity, right? Like you'd said in the beginning, we were talking about like creativity is about problem solving.
Exactly.
You know, and whatever tools you use for you, it's the more traditionally creative stuff. But anyone that's solving problems is being creative. They're using what you have. I mean, that's the whole idea behind Creating Good is really, you know, our meetups and this podcast and everything is really like creativity, creative problem solving, bring what you have, do that in community. And now suddenly we have a ton of tools and a ton of different viewpoints. And, and we can do anything. We can make good in the world. Like we can solve the world's problems if we'll take the time to do that.
Yeah, and we all have our personal experience.
Yeah.
And that's also something that we can convey into any kind of creative project.
Right.
It's your past, is your music taste, is what you like to eat for lunch,
Right.
you know, like that is part of who you are. And I think that kind of opens the conversation about AI kind of taking over the space and being terrifying for so many people. We're still not at that point, and this is the way that I see it in my mind, where it just creates something spontaneously, right? It still needs that human to give it an instruction.
Oh, yeah.
And I love that part. And I love that it can solve some tedious tasks like cloning in Photoshop for the rest of your days. But it can do it in seconds, and then I can get to the next project.
Yeah.
And that's also very important in the nonprofit world. There's always a need. Specifically to ThinkTogether, we are in the education field.
Yeah.
And we know that there's a lot of issues with the way that the system is working right now. And we like the idea of partnering with the school districts to help.
Yeah.
To say, well, kids deserve good education no matter what the zip code is.
Yes.
Right? They should be able to graduate from high school and have all life options available to them. Whatever that journey is, it should be powered by good education, by access to good education. And I know that you feel this because you have a background in education.
Well, that's what I was just thinking. It's so funny because I don't know why I didn't put all this together in my head before this, but I can't remember if I said this before we got cut off, or so I may be repeating something. But there's already with you, you know, talking to you, the convergence of the two of the things that I love, which is design and creating good in the world, nonprofit, all that kind of stuff. But then education is where I started.
Right.
And I am so passionate, about strong education because there's a lot wrong with our education system. There's a lot wrong with, just the ways things are often done and kids are taught. And and then the disparity between, even within one school district. Right. I mean, my kids go to one school in our school district, and it's an amazing school. It's one of the top schools in the area. And it's a public school, but it's right across the street from our house. Yeah. And then I have friends who are at another school in the same district, and they're like, it's terrible. Yeah. And this is a nice area. Right. Like Newport, Costa Mesa area. It's not but you get that everywhere. Yes. It's not, but and then, of course, you add on to that financial disparity, exactly. all the different barriers to that, and you end up with it ends up being like a class system almost of like higher class education, lower class. It's all part of the public education system, and it shouldn't be that way. No. And this is why this position at ThinkTogether was a perfect fit for me. Yeah. I feel very passionate about education. I've always had. And I have this intense love for design. So it was like the perfect Venn diagram of my passion and my love. But you know how that story goes sometimes. Sure. It's never, happy ending. There's still always like a lost slipper, things turn into pumpkins. Yes. And there's a lot of heartbreak. Of course. It's like the perfect definition of blood, sweat, and tears. Yeah. That's my day-to-day. But that's kind of how it goes when you have that passion for something, right? Yes. Because nothing's perfect. Nothing's ever going to all go the right way. And so you feel it so much more when you're that much more passionate about it. Yeah. Right? Yeah. But I think that's that using your toolbox of creativity is and then applying that creative problem solving to an area that you care about. That's where that passion comes from. And I think, more people, whether professionally or finding that somewhere else in their life, need to embrace that. Like, how can I use what I have to impact something that I care about. Because
Right.
one of the things we've been talking about a lot at Rogue and at Creating Good is how people view nonprofits.
Yes.
They view nonprofits as just people out there asking for money all the time.
Right.
And, not as conduits
Right.
for them to make change in areas they're passionate about. And they
Yeah.
can join these stories and be a part of. These are experts out there dealing with the world's biggest problems, and you can be a part of that. And I want to change that. I want to change that perception, because I get it. Like, that's how I felt until I started getting involved. I'm like, wait a minute. No.
Yeah.
These aren't like, sales people begging for my money, or they shouldn't be. That shouldn't be how I view it.
Right.
But work, and then to be able to, I know with my kids, start having those conversations at young ages and hopefully shape the way they see these organizations or just people out there who are trying to do good in the world and opportunities to do that.
Yeah, and I think that translates in finding your voice and your tone.
Yes.
And how you can pull those heartstrings without creating emotional pain.
Yes.
And be like, okay, now the response is you can open your wallet and donate.
Yeah.
I don't like that approach.
No.
I love that at ThinkTogether we're very inspirational.
Mm-hmm.
We don't use stock photography. We have pictures of our actual students.
Yeah.
We are so proud of their work on their days, and we are so lucky to have them in our programs.
Yeah.
And we just want to show their smiles to the world and be like, you can be a part of this.
And not only is that ethically better, which it is, but it's strategically better.
Exactly.
It actually works better. I have to. I mean, one of the things I think we talked about that in the lost session, we'll call it, but talking about how we bring people on board with the things that we know and the experiences that we have. Right.
Yeah.
We talked about how visual design is something that most people have in common. We all take it in, right?
Yeah.
We all experience that. But that doesn't make us all experts at it.
Exactly.
But it causes those feelings. And so some people feel like they have something to contribute, even when they don't really know what they're talking about. And so we have this challenge to how do we educate people and bring them into why we need to change this, even though that may feel weird or whatever it might be. And it's hard because people have very strong opinions on things. And I have to convince people, like, I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to help you.
Yes.
I'm here to be, like we were saying, like, if you call a plumber in and they're going to go, oh, I'm going to solve this. You go, yeah, do your thing. Like, I don't have an opinion. I don't have an opinion on, how you should run the wiring for my electricity.
Right.
But when it comes to this, it's kind of like everybody, well, that doesn't, I don't know. Like, what if we tried to combine that font and that font? And you're like, no,
Right.
and so there's this educational thing, and it's how do what we're doing is trying to bring people into the story.
Yes.
So that we can let them join in on that and be nonprofits in particular, but I mean anything, but like especially nonprofits have the opportunity to bring people into their story and be a part of it in ways that other organizations don't. And we want to do that as effectively as possible.
And to last a long time.
Yes.
Because we don't want that story to be over in the next 2 seconds.
Yes.
And we live in this time of the immediacy.
Yes.
We get people's attention for a second on Instagram or on social media or on a website. It's so fast.
So fast.
The world is moving so fast. So the way that we can make sure that story stays in people's minds is with a powerful image most of the times. People rarely, and this is so sad, but they rarely read an entire paragraph.
No.
So it's really about the punch that you can pack into a visual that is impactful and that people can remember for a long time.
Right. And one of those things, the reason I brought that up was one of the things that as we're having to educate people a little bit, strategically it makes people respond better to hope, joy. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, yes, you have to set up that there's a problem.
Right.
But the reason people want to join in on that story and become a part of it is because there's a solution. You're working on, there's hope. There's people out there doing this. And when you pull on the heartstrings too hard
Right.
and you make it all about the sob stories, often you'll get a one-time, here's $20 to make me feel better about
Right.
you made me feel bad. So that made me feel better. I did something and I'm going to go away now.
Yeah.
But when you can show like, no, this amazing work is happening. Lives are being this is incredible. You want to be a part of this. Then they're joining something long-term.
Yeah.
They want to be a part of that and they can become part of that story. But again, it's that educational piece because a lot of nonprofit leaders have been so trained to, we got to pull the heartstrings. We gotta just make them cry. You know what I mean?
Right?
I've literally had okay, how are we going to make them cry?
Yes.
At this gala, or how are we going to make them cry at this? And I'm like,
right.
Is that the goal?
Right.
Not that there are sometimes emotional moments and things, and that's great, but people cling on to hope. We all know the world sucks.
Yes.
We don't need to constantly be reminded of
No.
that. We need the hope.
Right.
That there's good out there.
Yeah. I like to say that music is my lifeline.
Yeah.
It is really what helps me make sense of sadness, or it's my sidekick when I'm working, or it brings me joy. But there's nothing like live music.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't go there to cry.
Right.
I go there because it fills me with joy to be
Yes.
I could see them and I could doing their thing, and I respect their experience. I just bought an electric guitar 6 months ago,
Yes.
and my fingers still hurt, and I don't know more than 2 chords. But so that kind of helps me really put their talent in balance. But I go there to be inspired.
Yeah.
And I want that to be the message of the work that we put out there.
Yes.
We know that the education system is not working.
Right.
How, in an inspirational way, we can make people feel like they can be part of the solution.
Yes.
Instead of just keep patching this problem.
Right. Well, we live in a world where people love to just, right now, especially probably more than ever, just yell about things they're unhappy about, but
Yes.
not actually do anything.
Right.
And you're providing an opportunity for people to actually do something and feel like they can make a difference.
Yeah.
And that's exciting.
It's so exciting.
And people have to be sick of just shouting and getting no results.
Yeah.
It's we can sit around and complain about things all day long, every day. There's tons of stuff that is very worth complaining about.
Right.
Or we can acknowledge, okay, this is happening. Let's fix it.
Yeah. I actually think that the pandemic really helped switch our mindset about education. Once our kids had to stay home and as parents you had to be the teacher, people were like, whoa, it's not an easy job, right?
Yeah.
We tend to feel like, okay, we send them to school for 8 hours and it's just another adult who is taking care of them.
Yeah.
So when we had to assume that role and teachers had to pivot to how do I do this remotely without getting a sense of my kids and how they're feeling and their emotions and things like that, really usually the comments that I get from parents who went through that, it's it changed their appreciation for education and the resources that we can have at home. My kids are so fortunate that they have been growing up with books all over the place.
Yeah.
But that's a luxury.
Yes.
Not all of the kids have that. And the work that we do, I think, together is kind of making that an even field.
Yeah.
Because kids don't decide where they're born, right?
Yeah,
They're
right.
just, and they still should have all the options available to them, whatever that path looks like.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's so funny because I look at, I was thinking about this the other day. I look at my kids' teachers and the principal of the school and almost as celebrities.
Yeah.
To me, I'm can I bother you for a second?
Right.
Because I just think they're the most amazing,
Yeah.
and I don't know if that's just my background in education that gives me that appreciation or whatever. But I don't know. I make sure to take the time to email them and tell them how much but then even then when I'm writing those emails, I'm like, am I bothering them with this? They've got so much to do, and all of a sudden I'm I feel like I'm writing to my favorite movie star or something like that,
Yeah.
But that's what
that's how it should be. Like these are the
Right.
people that are making that impact, and we're trusting. And I'm glad you brought that up about the pandemic, because I think you're right. And that is one side effect of the pandemic that I was really glad for, is parents getting that perspective of, oh, this is hard.
Yes.
Like these teachers are actually, wow, okay, maybe we should pay them more.
Right.
I don't know if it's going to go that far, but I hope so. But yeah, it's man, it's the toughest job, and the fact that you guys are out there coming alongside them and helping try to make things better and more effective is just awesome.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
I mean, another consequence of the pandemic, obviously, was this, learning loss.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another place where after school really can support that.
Absolutely.
So I really think, obviously, it was a terrible time in the world. No one wants to be there ever again. But the consequence, the outcome, it's influencing how our work is perceived and the value of it.
Yeah.
And one of the things why I feel like this job was a perfect fit for me was because I feel very passionate about education. I've always felt like this.
Yeah.
So combining this love and passion, love for design and passion for education felt like the perfect thing for me to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, last question I'm going to ask, I always ask, is what is the thing in your job that brings you the most joy?
There's two things, and sorry, I'm not saying
that's
just
okay.
one. The first one is when I get to design a piece that is going to be in a kid's hands.
Yeah.
And the reason behind it is that I remember being a volunteer at one of my kids' schools. And for like Valentine's Day activity, I brought some supplies to do like this Jackson Pollock inspired Valentine's cards because of course.
Yeah, because why not?
And there was this kid who was like probably 8 at the time who said, I love it when you come here because it's the only time of the day when someone tells me that I'm good at something.
Oh, man.
And that really is like something that got stuck in my mind because I get it. Like if you're not good at math or you're not good at English, they will constantly tell you need to improve. But art is that space where you're automatically good. Like everyone is an artist. It doesn't require anything other than a medium and a place to do it.
Yeah.
So that's like a big thing for me when I get to design something that is going to make a kid feel like that's a possibility to just be good and excel. That's the best one. And then the second one is that I am just like an addict of the CMYK world. I love print pieces. So when I get to do our magazine or annual report and see everything come from a sketch to my mind to the computer to an actual thing that I can hold in my hands, it just brings me so much joy.
There is nothing better than like, even putting up a website is great and when it's done and you can see the thing, but having something physical to hold in your hands or even a t-shirt that's got whatever it is, like you design something and then you have it in your hands and you're like, I did this.
Yes. And I can go like that, like show it to the world and be like, look, and you can touch it.
I know.
And it smells like ink.
And it never gets old.
No.
Every single time we get a box from the printer with something we've designed that's, either for a client or for us or whatever that shows up and I'm like, open it. And, because there's just something about that that's just so
it's
satisfying
so rewarding.
and rewarding and fulfilling. And I totally get that.
Yeah.
Well, where can people learn more about ThinkTogether and connect with you and all that?
So our website is ThinkTogether.org, and we do a great job talking about what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. We on social media, it's also ThinkTogether, and my personal Instagram account is at Maria Renee, Renee.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming over
and
doing this in person. So fun. And thank you for putting up with my apparently bad technical abilities and redoing the second half of this podcast.
Absolutely.
Also, I want to point out we barely repeated ourselves. Like we went in very different direction than we did the original time. And there were very few things this has been great. This is really fun.
Thank you.
So thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
Creating Good with Matt Barnes is recorded at Rogue Collective in beautiful Newport Beach, California. It's hosted and executive produced by me, Matt Barnes. Post-production is by our amazing friends over at Fame, the B2B podcast agency. Writing is by Matt Barnes and Taylor Bolanos from Rogue Creatives. Creative direction and design is overseen by Corey Hill of Rogue Creatives. Theme music is composed and performed by Jared Atherton of Chapters. Huge thanks to our amazing guests for joining us this episode, and thank you to all of you incredible listeners for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, and I would imagine you did if you're still listening, so don't forget to help us spread some good by giving us a good review. Preferably like 5 stars, lots of really nice words. It's very helpful. Also, tell your friends and subscribe so we can come straight into your potholes each and every time we have a new episode. Take the Creating Good pledge on our website at creatinggood.co. We'll catch you next time. This has been a Rogue Creatives production.